Ding. Your cheat has been received, please check your account carefully. Chu Han was unexpectedly reborn in the Quanzhen Sect. He thought this was his familiar martial arts world, and he could seize the opportunity to seize the protagonist with his foresight. Just the imagination is full, the reality is bone-like. This is just a sect that shares the same name as the Quanzhen Sect. There are no dragon knights or immortal sisters here, and there are some vanquishing armies. Chu Han carried a cheat and practiced martial arts to protect himself, while also pursuing the study of immortality. Gou is in the world of martial arts, using a nourishing method to silently study the art of immortality, cultivating boundless magical power, observing the changes of heaven and earth, and comprehending the 36 heavenly gang spells. As time passes by, he sits quietly in the courtyard, watching the ups and downs of the world. Unconsciously invincible, he becomes an elusive existence in this world. Keywords of the novel. Go in the world of martial arts cultivators without pop-ups. Download the complete TXT collection of Go in the world of martial arts cultivators, and read the latest chapters of Go in the world of martial arts cultivators. Chapter 1. Chu Han. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Chu Han. Pop-click. In the deep and secluded jungle, there is a young man in a blue shirt with sword eyebrows and starry eyes. Carrying a bamboo basket on his back and holding a sickle in his hand, he walked among the thorns as if searching for something. There's another one here. A mountain ginseng appeared in his sight, then skillfully cut the surrounding thorns with a sickle and began digging the soil. Half a quarter of an hour has passed. A seemingly aged ginseng appeared in his hand and wiped the sweat from his forehead, saying, "Today is a perfect day to finish work." Then he walked out onto a wider open space, left his sickle aside, put down his bamboo basket, and sat down to rest. Chu Han, a young man from a parallel world, for some unknown reason, his soul pierced through this world and was reborn on a medicinal child of the Quanzhen Sect for 3 months. Although only as a medicinal child, what I do every day is to go to the Quanzhen mountain to pick herbs, and in my leisure time, I practice the Quanzhen Sect's health cultivation method, the eternal life technique, and my life is relatively stable. It's just that this method is not an attack technique, it's just a simple self-cultivation technique. However, this chi cultivation is not that easy to practice. Even if one has used cheats, it takes 3 months to reach the level of beginner. My cheating is not a system, but my body. I don't know if it's due to time travel. I have a strong digestive ability and can convert various medicinal herbs into my chi and blood, making my body stronger. Ordinary medicinal herbs don't have much effect on me, and it's necessary to use aged medicinal herbs to have an effect. In the past 3 months, he has learned from some disciples of the Quanzhen Sect that the mountain is not a peaceful and prosperous era, but a time of war and chaos, which makes him even more eager to have a sense of self-protection. When he first arrived here, he thought it was the Quanzhen Sect among some knights. At that time, he wanted to meet the Dragon Knight, but later realized that this was not the world he had imagined. Although his name is Quanzhen Sect, there is no Dragon Knight, nor is there any ancient tomb sect, which has made him lose his foresight and completely blind. It seems that we can only take it slowly. Being able to live a new life with talents that others don't have is considered a great blessing in misfortune. Why rush for a moment? Chu Han, who calmed his mind, slowly stood up from the ground and began practicing the longevity technique. This longevity technique is a health-preserving technique that everyone in the Quanzhen Sect knows. Compared to the Tai Chi practiced by the elders and aunties in the park in their past lives, it is not as good. However, I have never learned health-preserving Tai Chi in my past life, and now I have no other choice but to practice it. Of course, this longevity technique also has its advantages. It is said that if one practices it to perfection, it can also make their physical and mental strength far superior to ordinary people. When practicing, they are also more attentive. Breath in and out. He spread his feet equally wide apart from his shoulders, bent his knees loosely, lowered his shoulders and elbows, had a weak chest and abdomen, collapsed his waist and hips, and held his hands in front of his chest, as if holding a ball. His chin was slightly closed, his back was embraced, and his knees were wrapped. Elbow tip, knee tip, foot tip, 3 points connected in a straight line, palms facing upwards, tiger mouth wide open, eyes seemingly slightly closed for internal vision. Although this method of nourishing qi is very simple, it requires a lot of perseverance and physical strength to practice. The most important part of it is the method of breathing. With each breath, he only feels a faint breath of vitality appearing in his body, and then uses his own thoughts to guide the vitality, swimming through the ren and du meridians, while his own qi and blood slowly swim under the guidance of this vitality. Half an hour later, he became somewhat panting, his legs became weak, and his breathing became somewhat restless. He knew that he had reached a limit at this moment. The longevity energy generated by the longevity technique will consume one's own qi and blood to strengthen oneself. With one's current body, qi and blood are simply insufficient. Continuing on is not for health preservation, but for harm to the body. Then slowly finishing his work, he took out an aged ginseng from the bamboo basket, wiped the soil off his body, and put it in his mouth to start chewing. As the ginseng was swallowed, he felt his body quickly digest it and transform it into a stream of qi and blood, flowing through his limbs and bones. The soreness and softness he had just experienced slowly disappeared under this stream of qi and blood. At this moment, Chu Han took a deep breath and a satisfied expression appeared on his face. This digestive talent is really good. His talent was discovered unintentionally after he traveled through time. At first, he thought he didn't have any so-called cheats, but after discovering it, it took him a long time to understand. It's just that this talent consumes a lot of aged medicinal herbs. In this Quanzhen mountain, there aren't many aged medicinal herbs. It took me 3 months to come to this world, and it took me a month to figure out my cheats. After 2 months of searching for medicinal herbs on the mountain, I only discovered 3 aged ginseng plants today. Qi and blood, as the name suggests, are blood and harmonious qi. Qi and blood are the 2 major substances that make up the human body and maintain life activities. Qi and blood have 2 sources. Firstly, they are influenced by the innate essence, which is the innate essence at birth and is not contaminated with dust. But as I grew up, it had already worn away. Secondly, the acquired essence is the essence of water and grains that is transported and transformed through the spleen and stomach, as well as the essence of nature. In layman's terms, it is the food that is consumed, digested, and becomes the blood gas in the body. And one's own digestive ability can also be converted into qi and blood through food, but the essence contained in food is too little, and eating too much can also lead to indigestion, making it easy to die. The vitality generated by the longevity technique is to absorb one's own qi and blood to strengthen oneself, and then use the vitality to nourish the body. But now my body is too weak, and with my daily food, I can only maintain my body's consumption. If I want to practice martial arts, that's really just like how my predecessor had been practicing for so many years and had not yet reached the beginner's level. After I came here, I made some medicinal herbs and it took me 2 months to reach the beginner's level. Of course, it was because I had the devouring talent that others couldn't directly consume the medicinal herbs like I did, because others didn't have my own digestive ability. Hey. That's all for today. It's time to go back. As my physical strength recovered, I picked up a sickle from the bamboo basket on my back and rushed towards the mountain gate of the Quanzhen Sect. It was getting late, and if I went back a little later, I was afraid I would have no food to eat. Passing through the dense forests of the mountain stream, walking on the familiar mountain stream path. Half a quarter of an hour later, a Taoist temple appeared in my field of vision. At the end of the winding mountain road, there are hundreds of stone steps and a tall gatehouse with the 3 characters Quanzhen Sect written on it. Speaking of which, this Quanzhen Sect occupies a considerable area here, about 30.40 acres of land, and is also considered somewhat famous within a radius of 50 miles, with a relatively prosperous incense market. Junior brother, you have returned from picking herbs. The two mountain-guarding disciples looked at Chu Han's return and greeted him. "I have met Senior Brother Xianqing and Senior Brother Xuanda." Chu Han bowed slightly and then walked into the Quanzhen Sect. The Taoist temple of this era was not painted much, but was built by combining bluestones and wood one by one. Some of the bluestone steps on the ground were already covered with moss, and each piece of wood looked like it had many heads. Obviously, this is a Taoist temple with a long history. In fact, it is the same. The Quanzhen Sect has been established for over 100 years and has been passed down for several generations. Today, there are more than 60 people in the entire sect, including Taoist leaders, disciples, and medicinal children. Chu Han arrived at a palace in front of a palace, which was the alchemy hall of the Quanzhen Sect. "Are you back?" At this moment, there was a white-robed Taoist sitting in the alchemy hall, with an alchemy furnace in front of him. The faint gentle fire was slowly burning, and he glanced at Chu Han. "Put down the medicine basket, go eat first, and wash and brew the herbs when you come back from the meal," he said. "Yes, master." After Chu Han bowed, he placed the bamboo basket aside and hurriedly left. When he arrived at the cafeteria, he found that there were only a few people left. Obviously, the others had already finished their meal and left. Then he didn't pay much attention, took out a bowl and started eating. The food in the Quanzhen Sect is not very oily, with cabbage, tofu, and rice. However, this kind of food cannot stop Chu Han's appetite. He quickly finished a bowl of rice and went to make another one. "Senior brother." As soon as he returned from the second bowl of rice, he saw a young boy who was a few years younger than him approaching it, with an excited expression on his face and saying, "Have you heard? Master Yuanshu is about to become a flying immortal, and there will be a vacancy in his position as an elder in the future." Chu Han frowned at the words and said, "I definitely know about this, but it has nothing to do with us, right?" The little Taoist said arrogantly, "How could it be okay? If our master could be promoted to elder status, our status would also soar." Chu Han shook his head as he looked at the young Taoist and said, "You've been overthinking. We're just the master's named disciples, not the entry-level disciples. These good things don't even turn to us. Even if the master becomes an elder, we still belong to the alchemy hall. It's just that we'll have a new head when the time comes." How could this be like this? The little Taoist was disappointed. "I thought I could follow my master to leave this ghost place of the alchemy hall." Although the Quanzhen Sect is not a major sect, its internal ranks are equally strict, including servants, disciples, hall leaders, elders, and sect leaders. Below the sect leader are 2 elders, followed by 4 hall leaders, and below are disciples and miscellaneous workers. The miscellaneous workers are Taoist children, medicinal children, and so on. And they are several medicinal children belonging to the alchemy hall, nominally disciples of the current alchemy hall master. If the current hall master could be promoted to an elder, they would indeed have some benefits, but not many. In the Quanzhen Sect, everyone has a clear division of labor, especially these miscellaneous disciples who work hard and often get scolded. In the alchemy hall, it is common to refine pills that can replenish qi and blood, or prolong life. This is an important source of income for the Quanzhen Sect. If not done well, being scolded or punished is a common occurrence. Compared to the other entrances, the alchemy hall is the most hardworking. "Are you trying to leave the alchemy hall?" Chu Han glanced at him and slowly said, "I advise you to give up. This is too difficult. Although it is a difficult job in the alchemy hall, it is also very safe. If you leave the alchemy hall and go down the mountain, I don't know when a natural or man-made disaster will suddenly occur, and the path of life and death will disappear. It was already an era of chaos, and human life was not worth it at all. Being a miscellaneous disciple in the Quanzhen Sect or something, without any worries about life, allows one to have enough food to eat while working, and has the opportunity to practice health preservation techniques. This is already considered a pure land in the chaotic world, and the life that countless people dream of at the foot of the mountain still disgusts him. The little Taoist sighed and said, "Oh, if only I could grow up quickly. I would become a disciple and spend all day refining in the alchemy hall, so I don't have to work as hard as I do now. Is it really good to grow up?" Newcomer, seeking collection, recommendation, and investment. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Fear of Ghosts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Fear of Ghosts in the Small Courtyard. After finishing his meal, Chu Han went to the alchemy hall to take the medicinal herbs to the small courtyard where he lived and began cleaning them. After sitting for so many years, the medicinal child is well aware of these herbs. After all, working in the alchemy hall, it is common for him to be familiar with various medicinal herbs. After sorting and cleaning all the herbs, he completes various processes. After finishing all of this, he began to continue practicing the longevity technique. In the afternoon, he ate the ginseng he had eaten, as well as the food he had returned to the cafeteria to eat. Taking advantage of his current full qi and blood, he naturally wanted to practice the longevity technique. Due to his travels, his appetite has also doubled, but fortunately, the Quanzhen Sect doesn't find anything strange. After all, at his age, it is normal for him to truly grow a body. This time, he practiced for almost an hour and felt that the energy and blood in his body were almost depleted before stopping. "Junior brother Chu Han, you are really hardworking." At this moment, an older miscellaneous disciple walked out of the door and looked at him practicing the longevity technique. He smiled and said, "However, no matter how much you practice this longevity technique, it won't be of much use. Unfortunately, we are just a group of miscellaneous disciples and cannot learn the true secret martial arts." Chu Han smiled and said, "As someone like us, it's already a great fortune to be able to learn this longevity technique. At least after practicing this longevity technique well, it shouldn't be a problem to live an extra 10 or 20 years. It's also worth it." There are indeed true Taoist and mystical sects within the Quanzhen Sect, but such sects have very strict requirements for talent, and ordinary people have no opportunity to cultivate them. Those like them who are still miscellaneous disciples have their talents checked by the sect leader as soon as they enter the mountain gate. People with such qualifications have long been selected by the sect leader, taken with them to personally teach and give them a Taoist title. Of course, Chu Han also thought about when he would secretly learn the true Xiangong method, but there was no chance at all, so he could only slowly cultivate the longevity technique. Ha ha ha. This statement makes sense. The miscellaneous disciple laughed heartily and had no interest in chatting with Chu Han. He went to the restroom and continued to sleep. Everyone's thoughts are different. Some people want to mess around and spend their lives like this, while others want to soar to the sky with their own efforts. Time is fleeting. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. On a night of blooming flowers and a full moon, Chu Han, who was practicing the longevity technique, felt a surging airflow inside his body. Click, a crisp sound echoed through my body, and at the same time, I felt my body light and a refreshing sensation spread throughout my body. Finally broke through Xiaocheng. Chu Han's eyes were full of surprises, and he had been stuck since he started. He had eaten a lot of medicinal herbs and food, and finally made a breakthrough tonight. According to the master of the alchemy hall, after breaking through the longevity technique, there will not be an immediate effect of transformation, but rather a gradual and continuous change in one's physique. The muscles and bones will gradually change under the influence of the longevity technique. At this moment, Chu Han's face showed a smile and he said, "Next, we need to take a good look at the martial arts in this world and see if they are as magical as those in martial arts novels." Returning to the room to sleep with expectations in mind. In the following half-month, he noticed changes in his body. His strength was about twice that of before, and his reaction speed was more agile. His ears, eyes, perception, and memory all improved significantly. The most obvious thing was that his muscles and bones were more resilient than before. It seems that the effect of this longevity technique is very magical, not as simple as I imagined. If I cultivate it to perfection, even to perfection, what about my own strength or reaction speed? Chu Han thought of this with anticipation in his heart, but also with a hint of regret. Within the Quanzhen Sect, even the common sect's longevity technique is so powerful. What kind of power would it be if it were a secret Xiangong sect? It's just the qualifications of its predecessor, and it can't even enter the eyes of the sect leader. Under normal circumstances, it's impossible to master that secret Xiangong method in this lifetime. Steady, I have plenty of time, plan slowly, there will always be opportunities. Chu Han calmed his restless emotions and said, at the moment, it's better to keep a low profile. There's no need to stir up trouble. I can't handle these guys. Just like this peaceful life, 2 months have passed in the blink of an eye as he collects herbs, sorts herbs, cleans herbs, and practices the longevity technique whenever he has time. During this period, he has delved deeper into the Quanzhen Mountains, collecting medicinal herbs and using his own cheats to collect and eat some. He has also made significant progress in his longevity technique, but he is still far from achieving great success. Fortunately, there has also been progress. This cultivation method is different from starting cultivation. The later it progresses, the more resources it consumes, and the progress of cultivation is not as fast as at the beginning. Although the improvement of martial arts did not bring him any killing methods, he was more flexible and had the ability to escape life. Moreover, his physical fitness continued to increase, and he no longer became as thin as before, which made him more satisfied. Alchemy Hall. Chu Han put down the medicine basket and prepared to eat. The Alchemy Hall leader, Taoist Yuan Ming, suddenly spoke to him, Chu Han, please wait a moment. Master. Chu Han was taken aback by the words, stopped his pace of departure, and quickly responded. Recently, the exorcism hall has been busy with affairs, and I would like to transfer 2 medicinal children from my place to come down the mountain together for practice. After a moment of contemplation, Taoist Yuan Ming said, I think this is also a good job. I plan to have you and Li Tong go together to help. Chu Han was a bit surprised. I didn't expect the exorcism hall to be so busy and even come to the alchemy hall to ask for someone. You should know that the exorcism hall is the most leisurely among these 4 entrances, usually offering blessings, doing rituals, and various supernatural events. It is also the best treatment among the 4 entrances. In the past, there were not many opportunities to go down the mountain to do things, but they all had to compete internally to get them. Now they will lack manpower. This made him feel a bit strange. Yes, the exorcism hall is currently understaffed. Yuan Ming explained after speaking, there have been rumors of ghosts in several nearby towns recently, causing panic among the villagers. This time, a few wealthy families took the lead in raising money to ask us to help with the practice, pray for blessings, and suppress evil spirits. This also caused several rituals to collide, depleting the manpower of the exorcism hall. That's why they came to our place to borrow people. I see. Chu Han suddenly realized and then asked, Master, there won't really be any demons or monsters in this world, right? As a young person in the new world, one should believe in science and not in metaphysics, but cannot resist crossing over. Who knows if there is a theory of ghosts and gods in this world? If you want to go down the mountain, you will encounter a real ghost. I have no idea of taking risks and would rather hide on the mountain for a lifetime than go down. Afraid of ghosts. Normally, people are afraid of the unknown. At this moment, Taoist Yuan Ming had a speechless expression on his face. He never expected that Chu Han, who had always been clever, would have such thoughts. Nonsense, if there were really ghosts and monsters in the world, the people in the exorcism hall would have died a long time ago. The longevity technique we practiced cannot deal with ghosts and monsters. Please forgive me, Master. Chu Han smiled awkwardly and said, I wonder why Master chose me and junior brother Li Tong. At this moment, Yuan Ming said solemnly, in the entire alchemy hall, only you have a good appearance, followed by Li Tong. With the two of you going, we won't lose face in our alchemy hall, and we won't be ashamed of the Quanzhen Sect after going down the mountain. Okay. Master, I am willing to share your worries. Tomorrow morning, I will go to the exorcism hall. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Descending the Mountain. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Descending the Mountain Exorcism Hall. Chu Han and Li Tong arrived at the exorcism hall very early. At this moment, there was only one Taoist in the exorcism hall, as if waiting for the arrival of Chu Han and Li Tong early on. Xuandu looked at Chu Han and the two of them and said sternly, "The exorcism hall is short of manpower this time, so I asked Taoist Yuan Ming of the alchemy hall to send you two over. Time is quite tight now, so you can learn from me first and train in magic. After noon, you will officially go down the mountain. Also, you must study diligently. If you lose face after going down the mountain, I will report to Taoist Yuan Ming." "Yes, senior brother Xuandu." Upon hearing this, Chu Han and Li Tong's faces froze and they quickly responded. In fact, the miscellaneous disciples of the exorcism hall need to learn various basic knowledge of magic after entering the school. Of course, this is not simple. Normally, they need to learn for several years. Now they are only temporarily dispatched, and the complex ones are definitely not easy to learn. They can only learn some simple steps, such as chanting mantras, reciting scriptures, and so on. Fortunately, Xuandu didn't have much expectations for the two of them. As long as he could handle this ritual, it was enough, because the main ritual still had to rely on him. "Here, I'll teach you how to ascend to the Dharma altar first." At this time, the Xuandu Taoist was guiding the two of them in their practice. Chu Han heard the teachings of the Xuandu Taoist and learned quickly, but Li Tong didn't go very smoothly. However, he also learned 7 or 8 points before noon, and it was still okay to make up a few. Of course, the main reason why Chu Han learned so quickly was because he had cultivated his longevity technique to the level of Xiaocheng, which allowed his body and memory to be developed, thus achieving such an effect. Xuandu looked at Chu Han and said slowly, "Junior brother Chu Han is very talented and quite suitable to work in our exorcism hall." "Senior brother, I'm flattering you," Chu Han humbly said, feeling a bit regretful in his heart. This senior brother is just an ordinary Taoist in the exorcism hall, not the head of the exorcism hall. It's impossible to transfer him here to work. All right. It's almost time now, we should go. Let's change into this outfit first, Xuandu said as he handed the 2 sets of Taoist robes to them. In no time, the two of them changed their dark yellow Taoist robes, and their temperament instantly changed. They looked like real Taoist masters, more like a generation of zombie Dao Changmao Xiaofang. After all, they had to go down the mountain to do things, so they couldn't wear clothes from the alchemy hall. Otherwise, what would others look like? "Senior brother, this outfit looks really nice." Li Tong looked at himself in the Taoist robe, his heart filled with joy, and his eyes filled with a hint of envy. The treatment he received while working in the exorcism hall was really great. "Let's go." At this moment, the Xuandu Taoist also changed into a robe and held a dust brush, looking somewhat ethereal. Chu Han and Li Tong, carrying their bagua bags and carrying items such as magic swords, followed Xuandu down the mountain. Li Tong was curious and excited all the way, constantly asking questions. At the beginning, Xuandu could patiently answer, but over time, it made him a little impatient. He scolded Li Tong a few times before he obediently closed his mouth. Jiuquan Town. After a long journey, the three finally arrived at the destination of their trip. At this moment, Chu Han, who had arrived in Jiuquan Town, understood why the people of the exorcism hall used to work hard to go down the mountain, because the treatment when going down was too good. In the Quanzhen Sect, they could only eat some light tea and rice, but after going down the mountain, they should not entertain their chickens, ducks, fish, and meat compared to plain tea and plain rice, this treatment is just a bargaining chip. As Chu Han looked at the food displayed, he also let go and ate it. In my past life, not only did I eat well, but meat was a daily occurrence. However, after spending several months in this world, I used to eat cabbage and tofu every day, which made me feel nauseous. If I wanted to have a good meal, it was just a dream, without any oil or water. While the three of them were eating and drinking, the officials of the Li family poured wine for them and gave each of them a heavy money bag. Sleeping on the trough is doing a ritual, also a way of internal competition. Chu Han glanced at the Xuandu Taoist and saw him calmly put away the money bag handed over by the butler. The two of them also put away the money bag. No wonder the people in the exorcism hall are all rushing down the mountain. It turns out that food and drink are not important, but rather the welfare benefits involved. In the future, if anyone wants to tell me that a Taoist is pure-hearted and has few desires, I will be anxious with him, Chu Han thought to himself. Of course, for such a matter, Chu Han's heart was not only envious, but also envious. He was just a person sent to help, and it was impossible to reap such benefits after the matter here was over. After drinking and eating, Li Yuanwei invited Xuandu to discuss the details of the plan, while Li Butler invited Chu Han and Li Tong to the side hall for tea. If the two young Taoist priests need anything, please give them an order. At this time, housekeeper Li asked his servant to deliver some dim sum, and then he told them his guilt and left in a hurry. I'll go use the restroom, wait for me. Chu Han said to Li Tong as he watched the butler leave. Before Li Tong could respond, he asked the maid for the way to the restroom. That's really good. Chu Han opened the money bag given by Butler Li in the toilet and found several strings of copper coins and some broken silver inside, which should add up to about 1 or 2. The mansion of Mr. Li is really big enough, it's just a mansion. On the way back, Chu Han looked at the floor area of the mansion and sighed in his heart. I have arranged everything that needs to be arranged. At this moment, a faint voice came from the study not far away, and anyone with poor hearing ability would not be able to hear it at all. That's good, let's stick to the old rules. Of course, after all, this kind of thing still needs the strong support of all the Taoist priests. Fortunately, Chu Han's cultivation of the longevity technique reached the realm of Xiaocheng, making his ears and eyes more sensitive than others, which was when he heard the sparse conversation between Xuandu and Li Yuanwei. What a good guy, this kind of thing can also be implicated. At this moment, Chu Han finally understood why ghosts were haunting the area. It was entirely these big landlords who joined forces with the Quanzhen faction to deprive others of their property. They were ruthless and wealthy, and it was true that they would appear everywhere. Holding ceremonies and holding land and water ceremonies all require spending money. Where does this money come from? That's natural for everyone to raise money together to get things done. Although the leader is the landlord, others also have to contribute money. If there is no money, compensation will be given. In this way, as the number of people increases, the money raised is not a small amount, just like the previous life's water droplet that even went public. It's completely empty-handed and white wolf. The main owner did not receive much fundraising, but was instead eaten clean by the leader. Fortunately, the Quanzhen faction is strong here, and there is no such situation of black eating black. Divide the two halves equally. In the past, Chu Han thought that the Quanzhen Sect was a pure land. When he went down the mountain, he realized that there was no such thing as a pure land in this world. Only in places where there were important people, there was conflict, and in places where there were people, there was class. No wonder Master Yuanming, the Taoist priest, sneered at this matter. He had already been aware of these things and had been causing trouble in the Quanzhen sect for so long for the position of an elder, yet it had not been completely calmed down, Chu Han thought to himself. Immediately, he sorted out his emotions and answered with a nonchalant tone. He had just arrived at the side hall for a while when the Taoist from Xuandu walked back with a smile on his face. He shook the dust in his hand and looked at the two of them, saying, let's set up an altar to suppress evil and serve the people. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Message. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Message. Approaching evening. A 4-square platform stands in the center of Jiuquan town, with black and yellow long flags inserted at the 4 corners. The long flags have symbols and patterns on them. In the center of the square platform, there is also an altar filled with offerings, incense, and candles. The servants of the Li family were busy preparing for the opening of the altar on the high platform, and the people of Jiuquan town were also attracted to watch by such a big commotion. Is this about to start working on it? Yeah. Hurry up and call you 8 aunties and 7 aunties. The Taoist approach of the Quanzhen Sect is rare. As long as the Taoist leader of the Quanzhen Sect acts, those little ghosts will definitely be killed. Yes. The Taoists of the Quanzhen Sect all have true abilities. The spiritual pills and talismans from the past have saved many people's lives. The onlookers pointed at the high platform, and everyone was discussing. People like to watch the excitement, and this move almost attracts all the men, women, and children from Jiuquan town. After all, inviting someone to do it, every household in Jiuquan town has given out money. Previously, being haunted made people anxious, and they also want to witness this ritual with their own eyes to seek peace of mind. If Chu Han were here, he would definitely shout out. He's a group of naturally good people who don't need to put in any effort. The noisy scene makes people look very energetic. Before long, the servant of the Li family shouted loudly, "I respectfully request the Xuandu Taoist of the Quanzhen Sect." As the voice of the Li family servants fell, the sound of copper gongs, drums, and horns appeared, and the surrounding people also quieted down. Xuandu Dao Chang appears on stage. A figure dressed in a robe, holding a brush, standing tall and serious, appeared in everyone's sight. Many people looked at Xuandu with a hint of awe on their faces. Xuandu has been practicing the longevity technique for years, so he naturally has a certain aura on himself. Chu Han and Li Tong, holding magic swords, imperial edicts, yellow talismans, and other items, walked behind Xuandu with their heads and chests held high. 3 people walked step by step onto the square platform. Xuandu shouted loudly, "Open the Dharma altar." With a flick of the dust from Xuandu, Chu Han and Li Tong arranged everything in a clumsy manner, all of which were practiced before going down the mountain, so naturally it wouldn't be too difficult. With the setup completed, the 2 quickly stood behind Xuandu, and now it was his turn to perform. Drink. With one hand, he pulled out the magic sword held by Chu Han, while Li Tong grabbed a yellow talisman and threw it into the air. Xuandu lifted the yellow talisman in the air with a sword, and with his feet in a fierce battle, he kept muttering and began to practice. Li Tong and Chu Han took a few steps back, cooperating with Xuandu to recite mantras and chant scriptures. Chu Han observed Xuandu's actions from time to time and found that he was performing various steps. Compared to the zombie movies he had watched in his past life, Mao Tianming was even more impressive. After all, that guy was still scamming money with 2 little ghosts. This guy doesn't rely on any ghosts at all. He goes through the steps of searching for ghosts, capturing, suppressing, and exterminating them. Each step has different actions, and there are corresponding spells and seal script coordination. Although it's just an act, all the steps are very strict, making people feel that it's true. If it's not because they don't know the truth, they really think it's true. But for those people who don't know anything, this is very powerful and convincing. It's like those Taoist masters or monks in their past lives setting up a dojo for people. It feels real. This guy really has some skills. Just his acting skills alone would definitely win an Oscar in his past life. It seems that there are still some things in this exorcism hall, Chu Han thought to himself. Half an hour passed, and the ritual came to a perfect end. At this moment, Xuandu was sweating profusely, indicating that this ghost was not easy to suppress. Fortunately, he has been practicing the longevity technique since childhood, otherwise he wouldn't have had the ability to complete this ritual. Ah! It's so difficult to do it together without anyone's help. Xuandu let out a few deep breaths. But when you go down the mountain alone, you can get many benefits, and it's still worth it. Then he sorted out his thoughts and turned to look at the people below the high platform, saying seriously, "The evil spirits in Jiuquan town have been exterminated by me. In addition, I have also prayed to the infinite heavenly Lord for you all. You fellow villagers no longer need to worry about the evil spirits harassing you." As his words fell, many people showed signs of joy, praising him one after another, and the whole scene became lively. Master Xuandu has worked hard. Serving the people, Dad, a little boy shouted as he looked at the adults beside him, "Did that evil ghost really get killed? Why didn't I see it? What do you need a mage to do if you want to be able to see? And you haven't opened your eyes, how could you possibly see it? I haven't even seen it." The middle-aged man glared at the little boy and said, "That evil ghost must have been killed by this Xuandu master. It has also caused trouble in the past, but as long as the real person of the Quanzhen Sect comes, it will no longer cause trouble. It is very effective." "Is that so?" The little boy nodded slightly. Li Mansion. After Chu Han and others finished the ritual, they were warmly persuaded by Mr. Li to stay, and the three of them had another meal to eat and drink. After 3 rounds of drinking, Xuandu and Mr. Li began to discuss astronomy and geography, and as they spoke, they talked about the chaotic situation nearby. "Can't you?" Xuandu was a bit surprised when he heard Mr. Li's words. "After those bandit armies were dispersed, they came to our side." "Yeah." Mr. Li continued after drinking a glass, "This news was brought back by my family's caravan, it's accurate. It is said that the bandits' army had tens of thousands of soldiers, but they tried to attack Qingshan city beyond their means. Unfortunately, they were hit hard and blood was shed in Qingshan city, and the entire bandits' army was scattered in all directions. If that's the case, we'll be a bit in danger," Xuandu said with a hint of concern in his tone. "After all, Qingshan city is also relatively close to us, so maybe these bandits will come to us. Don't worry. There won't be any big deal." Mr. Li waved his hand and said, "It is said that many of those bandit armies died at that time, and tens of thousands of people were captured and sent to the mines as slaves. Even if there were leftovers, they would be scattered and not much of a problem, at most only 100 or 200 people." Upon hearing this, Taoist Xuandu finally felt relieved. After all, these bandits are composed of low-spirited civilians who cannot survive. They lack many weapons and are all emaciated and may not even have the strength to chop people down. If there are thousands, it can still be intimidating, but if there are only 100 or 200 people, it is not worth mentioning. Taking Jiuquan town as an example, there are hundreds of households, each with a male servant. Even if they only hold agricultural tools, they can easily resist these bandits. As for the Quanzhen Sect, they don't care much. With just over 100 people and the terrain being easy to defend and difficult to attack, they are not afraid of these guys. After all, they can inherit their power for hundreds of years and naturally have the ability to settle down. The words of the two fell into Chu Han's ears, but it gave him a hint of worry. This world is too chaotic, with bandits everywhere. It's completely an era of war and chaos. Although these bandits may not pose a threat to the Quanzhen Sect, who can say for sure if there will be other natural and man-made disasters in the future. There is an old saying that goes, "Don't be afraid of 10,000, just be afraid of the unexpected." At this moment, Chu Han was secretly vigilant in his heart. It seems that he came to this world too comfortably. This is not the world of his past life. We must find a way out in advance, be prepared, and avoid any accidents that may catch him off guard and cause him to lose his life. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Truth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Truth. As the time approached, Chu Han and others returned to the exorcism hall, changed back into their own clothes, bid farewell to Xuandu, and walked towards the direction of the alchemy hall. At this moment, Li Tong turned back 3 times and looked at the exorcism hall from near to far. "Senior brother, if we could keep working in the exorcism hall, we wouldn't know how comfortable those days would be. If we could transfer from the alchemy hall to the exorcism hall, that would be great." Chu Han looked at him and said, "It's better not to dream anymore. The task of the exorcism hall is something that everyone is envious of. All the miscellaneous disciples are fighting, and as we are, we can't even think about it. The fact is, whether in a past life or in this world, how many gifts do you need to give to have a good job? How many layers of relationships need to be established? Being able to secure such a position is not about going wherever you want. There is also a possibility that if you think you are more suitable for the position, your position may be replaced by someone else. It's not just that you have no connection with that position." Hey, upon hearing Chu Han's words, Li Tong also let out a slight sigh. Not long after, the two of them returned to the alchemy hall. At this time, Taoist Yuan Ming did not sit in front of the alchemy furnace, fanning the fan. Instead, he seemed to be thinking about something, lost in thought. "Have you come back?" Upon hearing the commotion, Taoist Yuan Ming woke up from his trance and glanced at the two of them, saying, "I pay my respects to my master." After Chu Han bowed, he took out the money bag from his body and said, "Master, this is a gift given by the Li family to the disciple who followed senior brother Xuandu down the mountain. I hereby offer it to Master. If there is no recommendation from the Master, disciples will not be able to obtain unexpected wealth. Please accept it with a smile, Master." Li Tong watched Chu Han's operation on the side, feeling greatly surprised. However, he quickly took out his own money bag. Although he couldn't bear to part with it, he had to admit it at this moment. At this moment, Taoist Yuan Ming looked at Chu Han with some surprise, and a smile appeared on his face. "It's good to have this filial piety, and I'll take it. As for this item, you should keep it. You must grow up, and there will be more places to use money in the future. You can keep this money yourself." "Yes, Master." Upon hearing this, Chu Han slowly put away his money bag. He knew that as the head of the alchemy hall, he naturally wouldn't lack such a little money, and he didn't appreciate his small amount of money. But it's one thing that others don't like it, and whether one can adopt such an attitude is another thing. If one wants to do well here, they naturally need to leave a good impression on the big shots here. Li Tong, who was following Chu Han, breathed a sigh of relief when he heard Taoist Yuan Ming's words. He also put away his money bag and thought to himself, "Senior brother Chu Han is really good at handling things. He almost ran away with the silver he just received before it was too hot to cover. I'm sure you've already had your meal, so why don't you go down early and rest?" At this moment, Taoist Yuan Ming's tone was somewhat gentle. "Yes, Master." The two of them bowed slightly and left the alchemy hall. There was nothing to say overnight. As Jin Wu ascended, Chu Han carried a bamboo basket and walked through the mountains and forests early on. This time, he was not just picking herbs, but searching for a way out for himself. If he didn't prepare a way out, in case those guys attacked the Quanzhen Sect, he wouldn't even have a chance to escape. The current Quanzhen Sect, on the surface, is indeed very safe, but how long this safety can be maintained is unknown, and the only way down the mountain is through a well-built road. If it really reaches that time, it is completely impossible to escape directly. With this idea in mind, he wandered around the Quanzhen mountain and even found several paths down the mountain, considering the safety involved. After all, he might be ambushed by others when going down the mountain, and he would be dead. Then I thought about changing lanes halfway and heading towards other peaks, instead of going down from Quanzhen Mountain and walking down other mountains. After half a month of arranging the route, exploring its safety and feasibility, he finally breathed a sigh of relief and felt a bit of peace in his heart. After all, if someone caught such a route again, he could only consider himself unlucky in just these 2 weeks. The newly appointed elder position of the Quanzhen Sect has also achieved a perfect ending. The matter of obtaining the position of elder this time, the leader of the exorcism hall, defeated numerous competitors and won the position of elder. Watching countless people celebrate the promotion of the head of the exorcism hall to the position of elder, Taoist Yuan Ming's face was somewhat gloomy and not happy. Now, this one has also participated in the competition for the position of elder, but in the end, it was taken to that position by the head of the exorcism hall. Of course, it's not just him who doesn't look good on his face, but also the other hall leaders. The Taoist priest also has an unattractive face, and only the people from the exorcism hall have a happy expression on their faces. And these ugly-looking guys are clearly a group of losers. However, the promotion of the head of the exorcism hall to elder status is another battle for the position of the head. However, what does this have to do with being a miscellaneous disciple? It's okay to watch the excitement on your own. If you participate in such a thing beyond your capacity, you probably won't know how to die. Since returning from the mountain, he has had a different perspective on the peaceful land. This is not the pure land of the human world as I imagined. Of course, the ones who belong to the pure land here are the former self or some Taoist children who are completely unaware of the truth. In addition, he discovered a special thing, which is the miscellaneous disciples in the exorcism hall. Although they are all orphans like their predecessors, the composition of these orphans is somewhat exaggerated. These real orphans are just the accompaniment of those orphans, because with the support of myself and these people, we will not let those people have any abnormalities, let alone make people feel that this is internal competition. This was also something I accidentally heard from a senior brother. Although it was very vague, I could understand the meaning behind it. The so-called orphans were just descendants left by the high-level officials of the Quanzhen Sect outside. When they reached a certain age, they were just brought back. These people, after learning this news, he also understood why his appearance was not bad. Although it was not as good as Panan or Chinshimi, it was not much worse. However, why was he not selected for the exorcism hall? Of course, few of those miscellaneous disciples know about these things, and even if they do, they will not casually say them. Those who are unaware and think they really don't have much qualifications are also unlucky. What they don't know is that all kinds of internal competition have already been rolled up to the end. After the position of the elder was confirmed, the head of the exorcism hall was promoted to the position of elder and moved into the area under the former elder's management. In addition, the exorcism hall also welcomed a new head, the position of elder of the Quanzhen Sect, which has caused great anxiety in the vicinity, has come to an end here. The people at the foot of the mountain do not know that this haunted meeting has a direct relationship with the Quanzhen Sect. Of course, at this moment, Chu Han did not care about these things. What he cared about was how to quickly cultivate his longevity technique and how to deal with other cultivation methods. After all, the longevity technique was only a way to nourish the body and had no attacking power, which made him feel like he was almost there, seeking collection, seeking investment, seeking recommendation. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Status Enhancement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Status Enhancement. Time flies like a white horse, half a year is fleeting in the blink of an eye. Chu Han, who was sitting in the alchemy hall at this moment, stretched lazily. During this time, he not only had to cultivate the longevity technique to its fullest, but also learned alchemy. Of course, learning this alchemy technique, Yuan Mingdao exerted great strength. Since the dispute over the position of elder ended, Taoist Yuan Ming has undergone significant changes in his whole life. He no longer has any illusions about the position of elder. After all, the newly appointed elder can live for 20.30 years without any accidents. As for whether he wants to wait for 30 years to compete for the position of elder, he still doesn't know if he can live until then, so he has to plan for the future. Then, among a group of miscellaneous disciples, Chu Han was selected. The reason why Chu Han was chosen was mainly because he discovered that the progress of his cultivation of the longevity technique was really amazing, which made him think that the sect leader had taken a blind eye and let himself find a big advantage. Of course, this is just one of them. As for the second one, that is why Chu Han is more mature and stable in dealing with people and society than other miscellaneous disciples. This is also where he is most satisfied. So during this period, he rarely let Chu Han go out to pick herbs, but instead kept him by his side, teaching him various knowledge of medicinal herbs and explaining alchemy. Although there is no title of master-apprentice between the two, there is also a reality of being a master-apprentice. It has become destined for them to enter the gate wall and give him an identity throughout the entire alchemy hall. This alchemy is a bit difficult. It took me so long to learn it before I was able to get started. If it weren't for my cultivation of the longevity technique reaching the level of Xiaocheng and improving my physical condition, it would probably take a long time to get started with this alchemy, Chu Han thought to himself. During this period, he not only studied alchemy, but also frequently practiced the long life technique. Occasionally, he even stole some medicinal herbs to devour on his own, assisting in the cultivation of the long life technique. The medicinal herbs in the alchemy hall are not as abundant as those in the old year. They are all ordinary herbs that can only be refined to compensate for qi and blood, enhance yang, and other elixirs. For him, there is not much practical effect. After all, they are not medicinal herbs that have been aged. If they have been aged, it is difficult for oneself to access them. For example, ginseng, polygonatum, and other medicinal herbs that have been aged for more than 10 years are difficult to access with one's own alchemy. Therefore, it is difficult to obtain such medicinal herbs to eat. When I used to be able to go and collect herbs, I could wander around and occasionally find an aged medicinal plant after learning alchemy. I rarely go out. I seem to have no other place to obtain resources besides practicing the longevity technique. Sometimes he thinks that if he learns more about various prescriptions, he can prepare tonic diet by himself. Although his body can digest herbs, it is not as good as tonic diet. Of course, currently he only has access to some ordinary elixirs, such as blood-activating and bone-strengthening pills, or elixirs for replenishing qi and blood, enhancing yang, and so on. After all, this type of pill belongs to the general type of pill. Even if taken randomly, it will not cause any problems. This is also one of the main pills refined by the alchemy hall. After all, these things have good sales and can quickly accumulate wealth, which has led to the entire alchemy hall focusing solely on these areas and not seeking any other elixirs. For this matter, Chu Han had no choice. After all, he was not in his own power now and could not change the current situation of the entire alchemy hall. After he took control of the alchemy hall in the future, he would carry out reforms and obtain some useful pills for cultivation. This is the big deal. Of course, he was not in a hurry about these things. What he wanted to do now was to cultivate the longevity technique to the level of great achievement, even to the level of perfection. After all, the level of small achievement can almost transform himself. So what will happen after achieving great success? Or what will happen after it is completed? With such curiosity, he wants to constantly explore. Touch, touch, touch. Please come in. At this moment, the sound of knocking on the door interrupted Chu Han's thoughts. As Chu Han's words fell, a Taoist in his 20s opened the door and walked in. This is a forbidden Taoist, under normal circumstances, even higher than his own identity. After all, Chu Han is just a miscellaneous disciple, while they are entry-level disciples. Junior brother Chu Han, the hall master has called you over. Could you please inform me, senior brother? I'll go over now. Chu Han stood up and saluted. Junior brother, you don't need to be polite. Please go quickly and don't delay the main event, the young Taoist said politely as he looked at Chu Han. Although Chu Han is still a miscellaneous disciple, who dares to truly treat him as a miscellaneous disciple in the entire alchemy hall? In the entire alchemy hall, as long as he is not blind, it can be seen that Chu Han is about to become the master's disciple, and the possibility of accepting the alchemy hall in the future is greater than anyone else. Even if he doesn't get along well with him, he won't offend him. I pay my respects to my master. In no time, Chu Han arrived at the main hall of the alchemy hall and watched as Taoist Yuan Ming hurriedly bowed and said, "Get up. How did you read the alchemy book I gave you?" Upon hearing Taoist Yuan Ming's question, Chu Han straightened his waist and confidently said, "Master, I have read the alchemy technique several times and can barely recite the content from it." "Is that right?" Taoist Yuan Ming was somewhat surprised. Although he had long known that his talent was amazing, he did not expect that he still had an unforgettable ability. Then he smiled and said, "Then I'll teach you a lesson." "Yes." Chu Han responded and the two began to converse fluently. Half a quarter of an hour has passed. "Okay. Okay. Okay." Yuan Mingdao shouted 3 times, "Good." Although he had anticipated it earlier, the result still made him very satisfied. "I used to think he had some talent for practicing the longevity technique, but I didn't expect his talent to be so powerful. In the future, I will still sigh that the sect leader has taken a wrong look and feel regretful. But now I feel how lucky I am to have such a great disciple." This gave him a new idea. Since he couldn't compete for the position of elder, he would cultivate a talent who could compete for the position of elder himself. "Sit down and I'll explain alchemy to you. You need to listen carefully." Upon hearing Taoist Yuan Ming's words, Chu Han quickly approached him and listened attentively to his experience in alchemy during these times. He also learned from Taoist Yuan Ming that as long as he became the head of a hall, he had the opportunity to cultivate a part of the true teachings of the Quanzhen Sect. Although it cannot compare to the people who have been practicing with the sect leader since childhood, it is not something that others can compare to. Of course, it is precisely because of this that he devoted himself to learning alchemy, as it is crucial for him to have control over the alchemy hall. One explains carefully, and the other listens attentively. More than an hour passed quickly. Taoist Yuan Ming looked at the sky and said, "That's it for today. You go eat first and come early tomorrow." "Yes, Master." Chu Han stood up and bowed, respectfully exiting the main hall. After leaving the alchemy hall, Chu Han's mood felt a bit joyful. With the attitude of Taoist Yuan Ming, perhaps in 10.5 days, I can become his own disciple, and then my treatment will be completely different. If I could use Taoist Yuan Ming to let the sect leader discover my cultivation talent, perhaps I would teach myself the mysterious martial arts. Chu Han felt more and more motivated as he thought about it, feeling that the future was promising. "Senior brother, come here and we'll have everything ready for you." Senior brother. As soon as he arrived at the cafeteria, several miscellaneous disciples from the alchemy hall even prepared meals for him, which was completely different from the treatment he received when he came to the cafeteria himself. If the Taoist in the alchemy hall is polite to him, these miscellaneous disciples are trying to please him. Perhaps some people envy him, but no one dares to show it openly. "Thank you very much, junior brother." Chu Han didn't hesitate to take the dishes and sat down to start eating. A few people would occasionally chat and say, "Is this disappearance really fake?" Of course it's true. When I came back from picking herbs, I heard what other senior brothers who had contact with the pilgrims said. The world is not peaceful now. It's been so long, those bandit armies haven't been completely killed. It's too terrifying down the mountain, isn't it? Yeah, it's better to be on the mountain. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Surprise. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Surprise in the cafeteria. Chu Han, who was eating, heard several miscellaneous disciples say that the mountain has not been peaceful lately, and there have been chaotic troops running up to this territory. Chu Han is not particularly surprised by such things. From his travels to the present, he has also gained a new understanding of the world in front of him, which is even more chaotic than the late Qing dynasty and early Republic of China period in his previous life. What news about refugees, bandits, mountain bandits, rebels, and so on? At the beginning, he was still a bit nervous. After all, for someone from a new era who is accustomed to living in a peaceful era, nervousness is normal. But when I listen to such things too much, I get used to them and just listen to them as stories. Just like the refugee army that ran here 6 months ago, it didn't cause any waves and eventually disappeared without a trace. To be honest, these nearby towns, such as Chu town, are led by wealthy families to gather all the strong men together for basic training. In a simple situation where the whole people are soldiers, ordinary refugees dare not go to such towns. These towns all have their own defensive fortifications. As a grand view spanning dozens of miles, they naturally have their own confidence and are not toothless tigers. As long as it is not a large-scale military siege of the Quanzhen Sect, with the strength of the Quanzhen Sect, they are not afraid of anyone. Of course, if there were a large-scale army, the Quanzhen faction would not be fools. They could not have received any news, let alone be helpless and wait for death. There would definitely be other ways. Chu Han sighed, I wonder how long this chaotic world will last before it ends. He didn't pay much attention to this matter either. Anyway, he doesn't have any intention of going down the mountain at the moment. He plans to spend decades on the Quanzhen mountain before he knows all the Xiangong techniques of the Quanzhen sect. By then, going down the mountain will be invincible. Time slowly passes, and half a month quietly passes. However, during this period of time, my longevity formula has not broken through to the realm of great success. Instead, my alchemy has made rapid progress, and under the guidance of Taoist Yuan Ming, I have been practicing open furnace alchemy. The first attempt at alchemy was unsuccessful, and Taoist Yuan Ming did not care about such a result. After all, alchemy is not something that can be produced in one refining. The reaction requires more medicinal herbs to be continuously refined in order to achieve the point where practice makes perfect. Practice and theory are two different things. Even a genius cannot refine a pill through the first experiment. Time also passed while Chu Han was studying alchemy. He thought these days would continue quietly, but an accident still happened. That evening, a Taoist reported to Taoist Yuan Ming, a miscellaneous disciple has disappeared. What's going on? Taoist Yuan Ming looked at the Taoist who was reporting to him and asked. Xuanquan Jr. Brother, he used to come back an hour ago, but today even the cafeteria is closed, and he still hasn't come back, the Taoist reported to Yuan Ming Dao Changhui. Upon hearing the Taoist's words, Taoist Yuan Ming began to ponder. Master. Chu Han guessed, did you encounter any ferocious beasts while picking herbs? In Chu Han's view, it is impossible for Xuanquan to descend the mountain. Or rather, he did something unforgivable and had to flee the Quanzhen sect in order for such a thing to happen. Of course, all of this is just Chu Han's speculation. In theory, such a thing wouldn't happen to the ferocious beasts near here. They have all been cleared by the sect leader, and even the ones from a distance won't easily come to the top of the Quanzhen sect's territory. Taoist Yuan Ming said here and immediately stood up, now it's late, and if you want to search the mountains, you can only wait until tomorrow. I'll go find the elders and see how they will make a decision about this matter. Chu Han, it's not too late today. You should go back and rest early. It's Master. Chu Han stood up and responded. Subsequently, Taoist Yuan Ming left the alchemy hall. Watching Yuan Mingdao leave, Chu Han also left here. On the way back, he was also pondering this matter. As miscellaneous disciples, especially those like them, they have nothing to do with the secular world and should not think about going down the mountain. Unconsciously, Chu Han answered that in the small courtyard where he was staying, he found that all the miscellaneous disciples were discussing this matter, as if he was the last one to know about it. Senior Brother Chu Han. Numerous miscellaneous disciples, as they watched Chu Han return, each of them chattered and asked. His tone was full of concern. If there were really fierce beasts on the Quanzhen mountain, it would not be safe for them to pick herbs in the future. After all, they were different from Chu Han. Chu Han is now almost all studying alchemy in the alchemy hall and rarely goes to pick herbs. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no need for anyone to worry about this matter. You should believe that the sect leader, elders, and hall leaders will handle this matter well. For these people's pills, Chu Han can also understand that if it were himself, such concerns would also arise. Of course, he could only console the crowd and dispel their fear, and all he could do was do this himself. Time slowly passes by. At this moment, Chu Han lying in bed felt a bit restless in his heart, as if something big was about to happen. What's going on tonight? Chu Han thought to himself. This sense of oppression grew stronger over time, like a prelude to a storm. Ah! At this moment, a mournful scream came from a distance. In the middle of the night, such a scream sounded like the sound of a gong, ringing in the silent night. Sleeping trough, what happened? Chu Han, who was lying down, flipped over and jumped off the bed in an instant, then quickly rushed out of the door. What's going on? What happened? Several miscellaneous disciples in the same room, upon hearing Chu Han's movements, quickly got up and followed him, rushing out towards the outside. Chu Han, who had just run out of the courtyard, heard constant screams in the direction of the main hall of the Quanzhen Sect not far away. Help! Ah! Master! Ah! No, don't! Help! Master, help me! Someone has broken through the mountain gate of the Quanzhen Sect. Chu Han's mind instantly flashed with such thoughts. After all, it was his first time experiencing such a thing. In the middle of the night, someone unexpectedly launched a surprise attack on the Quanzhen Sect, causing a great slaughter within the sect. He was a bit puzzled. Where did the leader of the Quanzhen Sect and other elders go at this time? Unexpectedly, there was no trace of defense. Bang! In the midst of his thoughts, the door of the independent courtyard not far away was opened, and he saw Yuan Mingdao holding a long green steel sword and a package, with a hint of anger on his face. After looking at Chu Han, he threw the package in his hand and shouted loudly. Hurry up! Master! Without waiting for Chu Han to respond, he carried his long sword and headed towards the main hall of the Quanzhen Sect. At this moment, Chu Han just shouted and was hit by a package, causing him to take a few steps back. Weighing the weight of the package, there's no need to guess. This is the property of Taoist Yuan Ming. He didn't expect that Taoist Yuan Ming would hand over his belongings to him. Without much time to think, he grabbed the package and ran desperately towards the back door of the Quanzhen Sect. After all, with his current strength, he couldn't help much at all. Staying behind was just a burden on others. It was better to leave first and save his own life before making a decision. Seeking collection, seeking investment. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. The Destruction of a 100-Year Taoist Temple. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. The Destruction of a 100-Year Taoist Temple. Walk this way. Hurry up. The junior brothers behind you keep up. At this moment, Chu Han ran and shouted loudly. The other panicked miscellaneous disciples were wandering around, completely unaware of where to run. After hearing Chu Han's words, they instinctively followed him and fled. Watching the several miscellaneous disciples running around him, he also breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. At this moment, he slowly slowed down his own speed. Of course, it wasn't that he didn't run as fast as those miscellaneous disciples. After all, his longevity technique was about to reach the pinnacle of cultivation, and he burst out with all his might. He could have thrown these guys a few blocks away, but he didn't do so. He also didn't know if there were anyone else lurking here waiting for him through the back door. After all, those who dare to break into the Quanzhen Sect must also have a clear understanding of the front and back doors of the Quanzhen Sect. If he rushes forward alone, if he encounters an ambush, he will have to explain himself here. I'm sorry, junior brothers. In the future, during holidays and festivals, I will burn more gold, silver, and jewelry for you. Hurry up even faster, Chu Han shouted to several people in the crowd. He also controls his own speed, running in the crowd without moving forward or backward, similar to other speeds. Before long, a few people crossed several palaces and arrived at the back door of the Quanzhen Sect. Several miscellaneous disciples looked at the nearby back door, filled with great joy in their hearts. Along the way, there were constant sounds of fighting and screams in their ears. Fortunately, they did not encounter any enemies. Now, as long as they cross this door, they are considered safe. Seeing such a situation, Chu Han had a bad premonition in his heart. He always felt that these guys wouldn't be so foolish and there wouldn't be anyone lurking here. It was better to be careful. Then his figure slowed down a bit, and in an instant he fell behind, running behind everyone. Those miscellaneous disciples didn't notice him and hurriedly ran towards the back door. Only Chu Han ran towards the nearby courtyard wall, where there was a rockery and several old trees. After several miscellaneous disciples rushed out of the back door, Chu Han also relied on his own skills, stepping on the rockery, supporting the old tree, and climbing over the courtyard wall. Finally calculated. A few newly rushed miscellaneous disciples also breathed a sigh of relief. On the other side, Chu Han also climbed over the courtyard wall. As soon as he landed on the ground, he rolled and ran towards the back mountain of the Quanzhen Sect without any signs of stopping. The familiar path was one of the routes he had explored early on. With his familiarity with the terrain, as long as he ran into the mountains and forests to save his life, there was basically no problem. But before he could take a few steps, he heard screams coming from behind, which made him even more afraid to stop. He knew clearly from his voice that it was Li Tong's scream, which was also the voice of his most familiar junior brother. Sure enough, someone is ambushing here. Chu Han felt a chill in his heart. Fortunately he didn't run out of there, otherwise at this moment thinking of this, his footsteps quickened a bit. Senior brother, help me. Livestock. Ah no, a mournful scream and a ferocious laughter echoed in the silent night. But at this moment, Chu Han did not turn back. Instead, he exerted all his strength and ran quickly towards the front. At this moment, at the back door, several soldiers wearing armor and stomachs, with bloodthirsty expressions on their faces, effortlessly dealt with several miscellaneous disciples with their large knives in their hands. Those miscellaneous disciples also delayed Chu Han's time for 2 or 3 breaths. One of the big men, dressed in armor and stomach, looked at the only person who had climbed over the wall and ran for more than 10 zhang in one fell swoop. In the darkness, he couldn't see his figure clearly. How cunning! Several of the soldiers were stunned by Chu Han's speed of escape, as if they had been completely trained in killing him. Even if they wanted to pursue him, they had no idea. At a distance of more than 10 zhang in the darkness, they couldn't catch up. Chu Han thought to himself that if someone caught up with him like this, he could only blame himself for making it difficult to escape this calamity. After all, this was a carefully arranged route. This little Taoist runs so fast, his speed of escaping is simply top-notch. He was lucky enough to save his life. The few people looked at each other, feeling helpless about Chu Han's departure, and had to continue to curse and ambush at the back door, waiting for others to arrive. At this moment, the direction of the main hall of the Quanzhen Sect was roaring, and the sound of fighting became louder and louder. The sound of swords colliding was also continuous among these voices. Besides the Taoist voices of the Quanzhen Sect, there was also the screams of the bandit army, but these voices did not last long and slowly faded away. At this moment, Chu Han was drenched and panting heavily. Fortunately, he cultivated the longevity technique to the realm of Xiaocheng, which transformed his body and made his vision extraordinary. With the faint moonlight, he could barely see the road clearly, making his speed slightly slower than during the day. After coming out of the back door of the Quanzhen Sect, he crawled into the mountains and forests, which slowed down his speed a bit. However, he didn't dare to stop, fearing that others would chase him from behind. After passing through a large jungle, go to another mountain and escape from another direction, passing through a stream mainly to clear the traces left by oneself. To prevent himself from being tracked by others, he changed several places before finally stopping. If it weren't for his cultivation of the longevity technique approaching completion, he wouldn't have been able to persist in running so far. At this moment, he sat on a stone, panting non-stop. It should be considered safe now. I ran several miles in one breath, my feet were worn out, and now I'm still bleeding. I really can't run anymore. Looking back at the direction of the Quanzhen Sect, his face looked a bit ugly. Judging from the clothes of those people, it was definitely a chaotic army running around here, and the number was quite large. Otherwise, these guys wouldn't have had the courage to attack the Quanzhen Sect at this point. It was already clear that Xuanquan's disappearance was definitely related to these guys, who captured and interrogated the number and strength of the Quanzhen Sect. But these guys, knowing the strength of the Quanzhen Sect, dare to take action against them, indicating that they have absolute strength and can defeat the Quanzhen Sect. Moreover, taking advantage of the night attack, they caught the Quanzhen Sect off guard. Even if the Quanzhen Sect has a backup, they won't have time to use it. Based on his speculation, the Quanzhen Sect may not be able to pass this calamity. The Taoist temple that has been passed down for hundreds of years is likely to disappear after tonight, this damn world. Chu Han cursed a few words in secret. When he first started wearing more and more clothes, he thought it was the Quanzhen Sect of the Dragon Knight, but later found out it wasn't. Then he planned to practice alchemy and spend the rest of his life silently, but he didn't want to provoke anyone. He just wanted to refine alchemy on the mountain, swallow clouds and mist, quietly endure, and not provoke anyone. But reality has caused all of this to happen. Unexpectedly destroyed all his plans, and his hope for longevity was also considered shattered. But now he has nothing to do, unable to turn the tide. Then he tore his clothes and used them to wrap around his worn feet, seeking collection, seeking investment, seeking recommendation. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Inheritance of Inheritance. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Inheritance of Inheritance. Hey. Sitting on the stone, Chu Han wrapped his worn-out feet in his clothes while looking towards the direction of the Quanzhen Sect and let out a sigh. The occurrence of such changes in the Quanzhen Sect made him feel somewhat helpless. Even though he is about to reach the pinnacle of his cultivation in the longevity technique, his physical condition is far inferior to that of ordinary people, but he has not practiced any combat techniques, and has no combat experience. For example, this time, if I fight against those armored soldiers, it's highly likely that I will die, so in the end, there is no better choice but to escape. If it weren't for his good luck, he would have prepared his escape route early and probably won't be able to escape tonight. Chu Han thought to himself, after leaving this place completely, he must find some way to practice martial arts. Even if he doesn't get any unparalleled divine skills, he must give himself a certain degree of self-protection. If there were no such changes in the Quanzhen Sect, I would definitely have planned for the secret Xiangong of the Quanzhen Sect. But there is no such thing as if in this world. The Quanzhen Sect has been completely annihilated, with all their ideas and plans completely stillborn. Now he doesn't know where to go. After all, annihilating the chaotic army of the Quanzhen Sect is not weak. If they can eat the Quanzhen Sect in one bite, the nearby village may also become their possession. In such a chaotic world, as an ordinary citizen, if you want to live a peaceful life, you must find that kind of big city. Only those big cities have enough strength to resist such a chaotic army. Thinking of this, Chu Han couldn't help but think of the name of a city. Qingshan City. This Qingshan City is a large city within a radius of 100 miles, with strong strength. Last time, with his own strength, he fought back tens of thousands of refugees and captured many prisoners. It seems that I can only go to Qingshan City. After all, Qingshan City is quite close to me, about 80 miles away. Judging from the degree of my feet wear and tear, it will take at least 2 to 3 days to reach Qingshan City. As his thoughts reached this point, Chu Han couldn't help but look at the package in his hand, which was something that Taoist Yuan Ming had thrown to him earlier. Then he slowly opened the package and found that there were silver ingots of all sizes inside, totaling about 100 or 200 taels. Surprisingly, there is so much money. Chu Han sighed as he looked at the silver in the package. If it were an ordinary family, it would probably be difficult for them to earn that much money in their lifetime. He ultimately underestimated the treatment of senior members of the Quanzhen faction. Next, he took out a very small ingot of silver, about 5 taels, and then wrapped the package intact. These silver coins were the savings of Yuan Ming Daochang's life. In that situation, he entrusted all his belongings to him, which shows Yuan Ming Daochang's trust and importance. After all, it was at a time of uncertain life and death that I chose him. Of course, this is also one of the reasons. If he can safely escape this life and death crisis and easily find himself, it will belong to his property, and he is not worried that Chu Han will steal his silver. Compared to other disciples, he believed in Chu Han a bit more, and based on the situation at that time, there seemed to be no other better choice besides himself. At this moment, Chu Han took a deep breath and suppressed his greed in his heart. Without understanding the life and death of Taoist Yuan Ming, he could not easily use this silver. Hey! Forget it, let's wait until after Qingshan City to make plans. After all, with the knowledge of medicine that I have learned in the Quanzhen Sect, even if I have no money, I can still find a medical institution or something in Qingshan City as an apprentice to ensure my basic survival. That is no problem. Moreover, my current self is not without any capital at this time, within the Quanzhen Sect. The once peaceful 100-year Taoist temple is now like a human purgatory, with corpses and bloodstains everywhere. There is also a soldier wearing armor and stomach, holding a torch high, patrolling around, and occasionally repairing the bodies of Taoist priests on the ground. This group of people is not an ordinary refugee army. They have clear division of labor and strict discipline, unlike those refugee armies who plunder property and so on. On the high platform of the Quanzhen Sect Square, a man in black armor stood, looking at the battlefield with corpses everywhere, with a hint of malice in his eyes. At this moment, his black armor appeared somewhat torn in the firelight, with the most obvious feature being a long opening on his chest, as if he had been split in half by a sword, and blood was still flowing out of it. Commander. At this moment, a man in armor walked over with a worried expression on his face. Your injury. No problem. It's just a skin injury. With my external skill cultivation, I have now stopped bleeding. The black-armored man waved his hand at him and said, "How are the casualties of our brothers?" The armored man, with a slightly unpleasant expression on his face, whispered, "More than 30 brothers have died, and more than 10 others have been seriously injured. It's probably difficult to endure." At this moment, the black-armored man's face slightly changed upon hearing the words, "and this battle." Although he had been prepared for such a situation, he never expected such a large number of casualties, almost losing 1/3 of his manpower. Fortunately, the duration of this battle was relatively short, and I kept charging ahead, resisting most of the firepower. If these guys were to charge forward, they would have been beaten and fled everywhere by the Quanzhen Sect long ago. It's really despicable. These old masters with bull noses are really difficult to deal with. The man in black armor cursed, especially that old guy. He almost ended me with a sword. He had to admit that the Quanzhen Sect was very tricky, and now he regretted it a bit. If he had known these stinky Taoist priests were so powerful, it would have been better to listen to his subordinates and seize the wealthy families at the foot of the mountain. Perhaps such a high level of casualties would not have occurred. Although some villages and towns at the foot of the mountain have also formed some militia, those who were temporarily formed are not enough to fight on their own. That old Taoist is too powerful. We have more than 10 brothers who died in his hands, the armored man said slowly. Except for that old Taoist, the rest are not easy to deal with. He has developed some internal martial arts skills. Are there any fish that missed the net? The man in black armor slowly responded. There is. The armored man hesitated for a moment before responding. There were 3 people who escaped in total. One of them was at the back door, climbed over the wall and ran away. The thief was fast, but the brother guarding the door didn't catch up. The other one went out from the side door with a teenager in his teens. Upon hearing the armored man's words, the black armored man's face looked a bit ugly. I have arranged for people to ambush every door of the Quanzhen Sect, and surprisingly, someone has escaped. Ah! Forget it. Then he sighed again and waved his hand, saying, it's just a few small fish. If you run away and it won't cause any big waves. Also, bury all the brothers who died in battle together. Give them a good time for the seriously injured brothers. As soon as he finished speaking, another armored man walked over and reported to him, Commander, the brothers have found the place of the treasure trove. Upon hearing the words of the armored man, his body trembled. Isn't that why they attacked the Quanzhen Sect? Take me over now. The man in black armor shouted loudly. With the black armored man leading the armored man to the treasure trove of the Quanzhen Sect. In no time, everyone held torches and arrived at the treasure trove of the Quanzhen Sect. Seeing the arrival of the man in black armor, the figures guarding the treasure trove saluted one after another, Commander. Good guy. After entering the treasure trove, the man in black armor saw clearly what was inside and took a deep breath. There are over 20 large boxes in this treasure trove, all of which have been opened and filled with silver. One of the boxes contains the antique calligraphy and painting of Haiyu, as well as some yellow Taoist scriptures and classics, which are obviously treasures. Commander, these guys are really rich. One of the armored men looked at the full treasury of silver and exclaimed excitedly, it's still Commander Yingming who came to snatch these ox-nosed old masters. He really made a lot of money. Everyone around him also agreed. The man in black armor heard the compliment and his previous frustration dissipated. The level of wealth of this Quanzhen faction has long been anticipated. When he first arrived at this territory, he sent someone to inquire and found out that the wealth level of the Quanzhen sect was not inferior to that of the wealthy families at the foot of the mountain. Although those guys have money and are easy to obtain, most of them are real estate. When it comes to cash, they are far inferior to the Quanzhen faction. In the end, he firmly opposed public opinion and was determined to attack the Quanzhen faction. After the downfall of the Quanzhen sect by them, he did not disappoint by checking the treasure trove. If we were to rob those wealthy families, it would definitely not be as good as the Quanzhen sect. We wouldn't be able to farm or anything like that. How could those things be useful for cash? The man in black armor nodded slightly when he heard his younger brother's words and said, now that we have this money, we can become kings and build camps in the future, which can at least make us happy for more than a decade. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Chain Inns. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Chain Inns, hahaha. In the treasure trove of the Quanzhen sect, the laughter of everyone kept coming out. The light of the torch shone on everyone's faces, and they all showed a look of ecstasy, without the gloomy expression they had just shown. Since the last battle outside Qingshan City. For most of the past 6 months, I have followed the leader to hide in Tibet. Every day, I feel like a rat on the street. I am afraid of everything and I almost collapse. This attack on the Quanzhen sect was also based on the suggestion of the leader, who wanted to lay a foothold and establish a foundation for many brothers. Fortunately, they really annihilated the Quanzhen sect. It was like a dream, and they no longer had to live those turbulent days. Everyone was happy about this result. Commander, don't forget that there are several villages and towns under the Quanzhen sect. We need to cut the leaks well and not force them too hastily. Boil the frogs in warm water and take your time, one of the leaders said with a smile as he looked at the black armor commander. That's natural, we can't just wipe them out at once. In the future, we'll have to rely on them for food. Black Armor Commander said slowly upon hearing the words, now that this place has been occupied by us, they definitely can't escape. Commander Qi, we have discovered a cellar. Before the black armor commander could finish speaking, a man in armor hurried over and said to him. It seems there's something good. Then the black armor commander waved his hand and said, let's go. Follow me to take a look. Passing through pavilions and towers, black armor commander led everyone here. 7 or 8 men stood here, holding torches to illuminate the area. As they watched the arrival of the man in black armor, everyone bowed in unison. The black armor commander nodded to signal, and then the few people opened the opening of the cellar. Then everyone walked into the cellar. There is no sparkling pearl in this cellar, let alone any divine skill secrets. Here are some armor, weapons, and so on. On one of the shelves, there were neatly arranged swords and knives, about dozens in shape. Beside the shelves, there were also some crossbows and several large boxes of arrows. Finally, there are some battle armor, including a set of shining silver armor that looks majestic. Sleeping trough, are these things what Taoist temples should have? The black armor commander looked at everything in front of him, feeling secretly afraid. The crossbow is simply a great weapon in the military. War armor, swords. What kind of Taoist temple should have these things? He looked at everything in front of him, and it was not difficult to imagine that if these ox-nosed people were prepared, fully armed, and himself came to the Quanzhen Sect, he might be giving away their heads. Not to mention anything else, it's just this set of silver battle armor. If that old Taoist wears it, not only will he have one himself, but also 2 more, probably not enough for him to chop. Once he dies in battle, his team will inevitably be in chaos. In the midst of chaos, as long as a few Taoists wearing battle armor charge in front, the remaining Taoists will shoot with crossbows from behind. The consequences are unimaginable, fortunately. Fortunately, the eyes of the other leaders were also filled with joy. This time, we were able to capture the Quanzhen Sect mainly because their actions were relatively covert. After wandering around here, they have been hiding in the jungle without revealing their tracks. After catching a young Taoist and conducting friendly discussions to determine the layout and number of people in the Taoist temple, it was decided to launch a surprise attack at night, catching the group of Taoists off guard. If there is any unexpected event during this process, then this trip will have an unpredictable outcome. Ha ha ha. The black armor commander burst out laughing at this thought. Even if these Taoist priests are well prepared, what's wrong? They're not dead yet. Now that they are dead, we will inherit their inheritance. Haha. Ulin. This is the largest chain hotel in the martial arts world. There is only one in this Qingshan city. At noon. There are many Jianhu people sitting in the Ulin, drinking alcohol, boasting, and talking nonsense. Have you heard about it recently? Another chaotic army has emerged. Of course, I heard that the chaotic army killed all the Taoists of the Quanzhen Sect. Now on the Quanzhen mountain, I am willing to fall from grace and become a bandit. From time to time, I extort money from villages and towns below the mountain, plunder women from good families, and do all the evil things. Ah! It's really a pity to have a good 100-year Taoist temple. If it doesn't exist, then it's gone. I even went there to offer incense before the new year. Who said it's not? In this world, I heard that a few years ago, some rebels also killed the Quanzhen Sect. However, when more than half of the rebels were killed, this time the Quanzhen Sect did not stop them. The Jianhu people sitting in the lobby are discussing topics related to the Quanzhen Sect, which seems to have become the hottest topic recently. As a famous Taoist temple within a radius of 100 miles, the Quanzhen Sect naturally has a considerable influence. Many people in Qingshan City know about it and feel sorry for it. In a corner of the lobby, Chu Han wore a green shirt and placed a pot of old wine and a plate of beef on the table. He drank and ate expressionlessly, listening quietly to everyone's discussion. After waiting for so long, there is still no news from Taoist Yuan Ming. It seems that he has already damaged the Quanzhen Sect. When he thought of this, there was a hint of complexity in his eyes. He only arrived at Qingshan City 3 days ago. The original plan was to arrive at Qingshan City within 2 days, but he overestimated his speed. Due to a foot injury, it took him 4 days to arrive at Qingshan City. During this time, he also found a farmer and got a whole set of clothes. After arriving at Qingshan City, he changed into a new outfit and opened a room at Yueli Inn for the time being, then inquired about the news of the Quanzhen Sect. If there are many people in the Quanzhen Sect who have escaped, it should also be difficult to conceal the news. Of course, what he most wants to inquire about is the news of Taoist Yuan Ming. However, after all that time, the news of the Quanzhen Sect's survival still leaked out. It seems that apart from me, there may not be a single survivor of the entire Quanzhen Sect. Or perhaps 1 or 2 people would come out and hide their identities like themselves, afraid to reveal them. Chu Han could only sigh when he thought of this. With the current situation, he could not take the risk of searching and could only assume that Taoist Yuan Ming had died in battle. Now that the Quanzhen Sect has been destroyed, it is time for him to plan for his future. After being full of wine and food, he returned to his room and took out the package that Taoist Yuan Ming had given him. The total amount of silver inside was 220 taels, which was the capital he had established in Qingshan City. Hey! Let's still practice martial arts. The reason why he wants to practice martial arts instead of doing business is because in business, he has never been able to cultivate his own martial arts skills and feel at ease. Another thing is his cultivation of the longevity technique, which is about to reach the pinnacle of his cultivation. Not to mention, he can live for a long time, but if he lives to be 100 or 80 years old, there will definitely be no problem. As for what kind of power and wealth, once you have developed your skills, you will have the opportunity to obtain them in the future. In Qingshan City, there are 5 places where you can practice martial arts. As long as you join them, you can learn some basic martial arts skills. After all, they are all openly recruiting personnel. In the past few days in Qingshan City, he not only inquired about the news of the Quanzhen Sect, but also went to understand the power of Qingshan City and constantly collected the information he needed. Newcomer, seeking investment, seeking collection, seeking recommendation. End of this chapter.